Today, I want to tell you about the two paranormal situations that happened to me personally as a nurse. Well, this happened to me many, many years ago. It was my first job as a nurse. I had just graduated from nursing school, and even though during nursing school I already heard. Well, are you going to let me tell the story or what? And although during nursing school I had already heard many stories about hospitals, apparitions, things that happened in hospitals and during my professional practices, but nothing had ever happened to me. I didn't believe in those things. I was unaware of all those topics. It was during a night shift. In fact, at that time, I only worked night shifts. I already had one of my children, so it was easier for me to leave him at night and go to work. This hospital, it should be noted, was a private hospital in the city of Tijuana, exactly in playas of Tijuana. And being a private hospital, it only receives certain emergencies. Not every night there were emergencies. And I worked on the second floor. On this second floor, there were only oncology patients and foreigners. They all came from different places. This hospital was very famous for having some very innovative alternative oncology therapies at that time. I give you all this context because I had at a certain hour in the early morning, I had to prepare many solutions, but it was an hour in the early morning, around 3 or 4 in the morning when we started to prepare. There were days when it was many solutions, other days fewer, but almost always between two people, two nurses, we prepared all these solutions and medications that we had to have ready. On this occasion, I had to be alone due to situations. I don't remember well. Sometimes staff were needed elsewhere, and I was alone preparing all the solutions. I tell you right there where I was preparing the solutions, which was the nurses' station on that floor. At the bottom, very close to that area, was what would be the hospital's emergency room. So the times there were emergencies, and if there was a lot of activity during the emergency, well, you could hear it there where we were in the nurses station, that there was activity in the emergency room, and I started to hear that an emergency had arrived. All the noises could be heard. I started to hear a child crying, so I paid more attention. I don't know, it was a child that I imagine, like when you hear a child of about 4 years old crying, 3, 4 years old. Well, it wasn't a little baby nor a big child, but more or less, I don't know, I imagine that age. I said, "Oh, the child who arrived at the emergency room, what could have happened to him?" I kept preparing the solutions and was very attentive because he wouldn't stop crying. There was a lot of movement, a lot of noise, like metal sounds. I even sometimes managed to hear something like a chain, as if they were dragging a chain. But there were things you could be moving in the emergency room. In those times, the metal things were used a lot, and so it was normal to hear those metallic noises and bangs and so on. The child did not stop crying for a long time, which led me to be preparing those solutions by myself. And at the sense that is here, the crying would stop a little and then start again. So when the crying started again, I would say, "Oh, well, what's happening that they can't calm that child? What's happening that he keeps crying? Was I because even if something was happening, well, he kept crying. Something could be put to, I imagine, right? Say, give him something for the pain, calm him down. What could be happening to that child? Because there was so much crying and screaming that wouldn't stop from the child, but it was true that it was the child and all the movement that I heard the most. I didn't hear adult voices or anything, but I didn't realize that until later, right? So, well, all this happened, but it was a good while. I don't know, an hour most that it took. When I finished preparing everything, I didn't hear anything anymore. The doctor on duty who was receiving emergencies, well, occasionally he would also go up to the second floor and ask if there was anything. If we didn't call him, he would go up as well to see if everything was okay. There were many who were quite ill in the terminal stages of their cancer. So there were always things to be checking, monitoring, and so on. Well, when he came up, when I saw the doctor, I said to him, "Doctor, what happened with the emergency?" And he said to me, "What emergency?" And I said, "The emergency that happened a while ago." "What emergency?" And then I started to say to him, "Yes, the emergency." I mean, as if it were a joke. I said, "Oh, the doctor doesn't want to tell me." Like I started thinking he was joking with me, right? That no, what emergency? And I said to him, "The emergency that happened a little while ago with a child." "No, what do you mean?" Then, when I saw him more serious, I said, "Doctor, the child's emergency about an hour ago, the child wouldn't stop crying. Tell me already." And I said to him like that, "I want to know the gossip because what happened to that child who wouldn't stop crying and what happened in the emergency?" And then he told me, "Alicia, there hasn't been a single emergency today, Mo." I said, "Oh, doctor, I don't believe you." And he told me there hasn't been. I said, "I heard it." I said, "That's a," and yes, and then since we sometimes talked about things that happened in hospitals, I said, "Doctor, I'm one of those people who has never experienced anything paranormal. I've never seen a ghost. I've never seen anything, nor do I believe." And I heard it. I heard it. I said, "I heard how they moved." I said, the table, the metal table, like things that were in the emergency room that I knew. I said, like, I heard everything, how they moved that, and but you could hear some chains. I said, and I want to know what happened and what. And until he told me, "No, really, Cook," he said. And yes, more seriously, he told me, "That child you say you heard crying, other people have already told me they hear a child crying, but like everything, well, what can you do, eh?" He says, "Yes, yes, they had told me, son, no, I have never heard it, but several people have already said they have heard a child crying in the emergency room." I don't know what happened. And well, I was super, super amazed that I did hear it. I can continue to testify and assure that I heard it. Now, in that same hospital, a second thing happened to me. And that wasn't right away or even months later, because I also spent time there that time. I even worked there for a few years, and then I left that hospital and then returned years later to work at that hospital. So on this occasion, after some time had passed, I was working on the first floor of the hospital. There were not only oncology patients there, but patients of all kinds with any diagnosis were received there. And there was a room exactly in front of the nurses station on that floor, where we sometimes placed the more serious, more delicate patients, so we could be closer to keep an eye on them. Often that room was empty because we always kept it for whoever was more serious, or if a case like that came in, well, that was the room. It should be noted and about that same room, that I had heard other nurses say, when a patient arrived who wasn't so serious, they would say, "Where do we put them? To which bed do we move them?" Or same, and there were many nurses who would say, "No, no, not in that one. Don't put them in that one, because those who go into that room die." And I always told them, well, it made me laugh, just like now. Exactly. I laughed, I mocked and said, "Let's see how." Yes, yes, many patients who have been in that room end up passing away. So no, no, put your they would say, "If this one isn't that serious, don't put them there. There was something wrong," right? They always mentioned it like that about that room, right? And we laughed. People who have worked at night and know, if there is an opportunity and there is not much work, they would give us time to go and rest for an hour during the shift or so, right? And that's it. Well, was permission given to me by my supervisor at that time. The nursing supervisor of that shift could tell me, "Well, you go at such and such time, and you go at such and such time," and that's how we took turns. So that night, which was much calmer, it was empty. That room was empty. So nas personally kay may saying, "Can I go in there to rest?" Nasisay mo si sa dise kun mo yes na ko said masasani na because I want to. I mean, sometimes it was in a chair, in a recliner, wherever I could on the stretcher, but there, well, it was like having more of a chance to rest. Amo se sent por esa magazine and one lying face down on the bed, flipping through the magazine. The position I was in, well, I was like this, with my head resting and moving the magazine. I was exactly like this elbow resting and moving the magazine. I felt like this was pulled really hard, like strong and fast, that boom, I fell. I mean, I for myself, I just fell onto the magazine and got up really quickly, super angry. I thought that we had an orderly who was a big prankster and played a lot of jokes on us. And I said, of course, it was him. And I even managed to see a shadow when that happened to me. So I said, oh, he ran away. But it's true that later, no, I'm analyzing it. I didn't hear a noise like someone running away, but I saw the shadow and I said it was him. And mapana, and I sent out to look. I will not look for him. That the whole central area was very, very calm. And further ahead in the hallways, there's sometimes where we left a stretcher or where we put the stretchers that were going to be used. And he was precisely there when I arrived, lying on a stretcher. And well, I saw that he looked like he was super asleep on the stretcher. And also something important, he was covered like with, well, with a sheet. He was covered with a sheet. So I said he couldn't have done that so like so quickly, right? And I didn't want to say anything to him. I was still super angry and thinking it was him. But then I said, oh, I'm not going to, I didn't want to bother him. I said, he's Pachima, he's pretending to be asleep and that's it. No, I'm not going to start a fight right now at this hour. And Verto Macenos, in the morning, I did start telling him that those things are not done, that I don't know what, that blah, blah, blah. Then he says, it wasn't me, Akot. I said, yes, it was you. See, well, the thing is, he always denied that it was him. The one of the nurses who were there in the central, when I was telling her that, told me it wasn't him. I mean, she told me the times and everything, coincidences that it couldn't have been, the times he went to rest, etc., etc. So the only explanation I give is, well, then I kept thinking they say that in that room there's something bad. Well, who knows? It didn't like that I was there resting, looking at the magazine. Now, my lesson from all this, honestly, to this day, I still believe that there are people who are more sensitive and others who are less sensitive, like me, in seeing things, in feeling things. There are there are thousands of stories from colleagues, from friends who I know did experience things they told me about. But I say, well, they are more sensitive people because nothing like what I'm telling you ever happened to me again. Nothing similar that I would call paranormal. Many very beautiful things have happened to me, others that I considered very unpleasant, but I always think of a real life explanation that always in hospitals, places where people have passed away, well, there will always be types of energy that someone might feel. And one more thing, also a lot on what we focus on. Finally, I invite you to subscribe, to keep listening to many stories I have to tell, many lessons to share, and that makes me very, very happy. I send you a big hug, and until the next story.